Good day, everyone. Today is Friday, September 16th, 2016. I'm your host for today's webinar titled The National Nanotechnology Initiative with a Focus on Resources for Educators. My name is Mike Lasecki, speaking to you from the Maricopa Community Colleges in Tempe, Arizona. Today's webinar is brought to you by the NACK Network at Penn State University and the NCI-SW at Arizona State University, with grateful acknowledgement of support from the National Science Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. You're in listen-only mode for this webinar. There'll be plenty of opportunities to place your questions in the upper right in the chat window, and then just hit that little speech balloon, and that'll send the questions out to us. We'll have a couple of polls today, and I'll explain how those work as we get to them. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome our presenter, Lisa Friedersdorf, who is the Deputy Director of the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. Lisa's been involved with nanotechnology for nearly 20 years, and she has a particular interest in advancing commercialization through partnerships between universities and government. She's a strong advocate of STEM as well. Lisa, would you like to come on, please, and say hi to everyone? Also, I believe your background is engineering and material science as well, isn't it? There you are. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, my background is material science and engineering. My undergraduate was in mechanical engineering, and then I moved into materials and nanotechnology.
Cool. How did you get into, oh, I see, that materials was your entree into the nano world, huh?
It was, and actually I used some of the very first instruments that really opened up the whole field of nanotechnology, the atomic force and scanning tunneling microscopes, when they were very new and novel instruments, and looked at a lot of surface interactions on materials, and that really was how I got started in nanotechnology.
Oh, perfect. Your audio sounds very good, Lisa. Lisa, before you get started, let me introduce our moderator today, Bob Ehrman. Bob, would you come along and say hi to everybody? You're the Managing Director of the NACK Network, right? Bob, we don't hear you at this point, but I do see that you've unmuted your phone. Everyone, we're just waiting for a moment for Bob to make his connections. Okay, let's not worry about that for now. Lisa, why don't you go ahead and click on the lower left of your screen, take us forward into your presentation, and we'll connect with Bob in a few moments.
Okay, so I have control.
Yes, you do on that. There you go.
All right, fantastic. So I thought it would be a good place to start to just poll the audience and find out the level of familiarity about the National Nanotechnology Initiative, and this will really inform my comments over the next few moments.
So colleagues, you can see the radio buttons on the screen. Lisa, already people are pouring in their answers. They're either very familiar with the initiative or somewhat familiar, or they'd like to know more. So let's give them just a moment to respond. So there's a whole spectrum of people here. You've got a few that know about it, and the majority of us are somewhat familiar, and some that really don't know at all, Lisa.
Would you like me to go on?
I think so. I'll go ahead and close the poll here, and then you can just take us on to the next slide.
Okay, so although this will be a review for some of you, obviously, I think it might be useful to share a little bit more information about what the Nanotechnology Initiative is and how it runs, because that really is the basis for this discussion today. So the National Nanotechnology Initiative was launched in 2000 when President Clinton gave a speech at Caltech, and at that speech he laid out some concepts that really have become the foundation for the NNI. And I don't have the precise words in front of me, but it was something like, imagine if, and there were 3 challenges that were put forth, and those were if we could store the information in the Library of Congress in the volume of a sugar cube, or if we could develop materials that were stronger than steel at a fraction of the weight, or if we could detect cancer long before it's visible by the human eye. And these were three ideas that were put forward that really shows the breadth of nanotechnology. It's not one particular field. It really impacts a wide range of activities, and we'll talk about that more as we go forward. So that was really laying the foundation for the concept of the NNI, and it was recognized then that this was not, a quick, you wouldn't reach these challenges quickly. It's looking 20 or more years out into the future. And now we're about 15 years into the initiative, and there's still very strong collaboration, and I'll show some examples of that. But it is a collaborative R&D activity intended to advance the understanding of nanotechnology. It is a federal U.S. federal government activity. There's 20 departments and independent agencies that are engaged, and these range from the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, the regulatory bodies like the Environmental Protection Agency, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So it's a very broad and interdisciplinary activity. Of those 20 federal departments, about 11 of them have actual budgets that go to R&D, and the others have other activities that contribute to the overall efforts. The 2017 budget, and you can see on the right-hand side of the screen an image of the supplement to the President's 2017 budget. By law, every year we put together concepts for, what's been done and what the priorities are for the coming year in laying out a budget for those activities. That budget is really made up of the pieces that the agencies feel are appropriate for their mission space. So this is a coordinated initiative. It's not a distinct funding program. So there's not nano money that is put into one pot and then divvied up. It's really the contributions by the agencies based on their needs and the activities that overlap with nanotechnology. The NNI, the vision of the NNI is a future in which the ability to understand and control matter on the nanoscale leads to a revolution in technology and industry that benefits society. And that last part is very important. It's not just the advancement of science broadly, it's really looking at how can this impact and benefit our society. The four goals of the NNI have remained the same since its inception, and they are to advance a world-class nanotechnology research and development program, foster the transfer of new technologies into products for commercial and public benefit, develop and sustain educational resources, a skilled workforce, and a dynamic infrastructure and toolset to advance nanotechnology. And that's where we're going to be spending a lot of focus on our discussion today. And the final one, and this is really overarching and informs all of the activities in the NNI, and that is to support the responsible development of nanotechnology. One of the things that the initiative does and our office coordinates is the development of key NNI documents. And I've already mentioned a little bit about the budget supplement, and that comes out every year. And again, these are mandated by law. The NNI was put into law in 2003. The other thing is we are responsible for pulling together the NNI strategic plan. Every 3 years, the agencies work together to develop a plan for the future and lay out some priority areas. The current NNI strategic plan is currently out for public comment for one more week until next Friday. This has been under development over the past year, a lot of work among the agencies to really define the strategic plan that they see is necessary to move the NNI forward. The document on the right is an environmental health and safety research strategy, and this is another key area. It is part of responsible development, but it is even bigger than that. It's really looking at environmental health implications that are possible with nanotechnology. In this strategy, or research strategy that was developed by the NNI agencies, and in particular, a subgroup called the Nanotechnology Environmental Health Implications Working Group, developed this strategy that they really use to guide their conversations in their work, their collaborative research. There are also a number of guidance documents, and one of the things that I was asked to do during this presentation was to point to resources that are available to you. And I put this right up front because I really feel that this is an important area. People are sometimes not aware that nanomaterials may have different handling considerations than bulk materials. For instance, aluminum at the nanoscale can become explosive. At the bulk scale, that's not an issue. So there may be special precautions that need to be taken if you're handling or using nanomaterials, especially if you're conducting research. So I point to these documents right up front, and I always point to these with my students so that they're aware that this is the same as working with chemicals. You need to know how to handle them safely and understand what precautions might be necessary. So these are examples of current intelligence bulletins, approaches for safe handling of nanotechnology, some guidance documents. There's a number of documents. There are some more recent ones that are not shown here as well that are developed by the National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety, or Safety and Health, NIOSH, and OSHA. And these can be found, you can see our logo on the bottom left of my screen is nano.gov, and I will refer many times. You can find this on nano.gov. There's a wealth of information there.
Lisa, excuse me for the interrupting. There was a question I thought it might be interesting to pause for a moment. Does your office do legislation, or is it more policy and then addressing these sort of issues? Are you ever involved in legislation?
So we are part of the executive branch. That's a great question. So we're a part of the executive branch. So our office actually reports up through the National Science and Technology Council. Through I left out the organizational chart, but we report up through the White House. So the director and deputy director are considered OSTP staff. So we're part of the executive office of the president. So because we're part of the executive branch, we don't actually create legislation. That's done by Congress. But there are times when we may be asked to comment on drafts or things of that nature, because we are the research and development experts. So there might be opportunities where they say, does this make sense? But we don't actually create the legislation. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And Lisa, as long as we're paused, I think we have Bob back on audio. Bob, will you check in with us for just a moment? Okay, Bob, I saw that you unmuted your mic. Oh, there you are. There you are, Bob. Yes, now we can.
Yay.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Bob. Lisa, excuse me. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa, for what I didn't get to say earlier. Thank you for your time in devoting to this webinar today. I think it's going to be, it has been already and will be very valuable for us. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa. Thanks for allowing us that check-in with Bob. Go ahead.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so I mentioned that a lot of what the NNI is about is collaborative activities, and I wanted to give an example of activities that were formed about 6 years ago. In 2010, we launched areas which we refer to as the Nanotechnology Signature Initiatives, and these are areas that address research and development gaps in a certain area of critical national need. And these areas have been identified that can be more quickly advanced through enhanced coordination and collaboration. It leverages the skills and resources across the agencies. It provides a forum for discussion, and it also catalyzes communities around these topical areas. Each one of these signature initiative white papers, and you see them imaged here, provide thrust areas and key research needs in those areas that again, the community can kind of rally around as these are area of needs to advance these particular topical areas. The first 3 signature initiatives that were formed back in 2010 were the nanotechnology for solar energy collection and conversion, nanoelectronics for 2020 and beyond, and sustainable nanomanufacturing, creating the industries of the future. The solar signature initiative was, pardon the pun, sunset just this past year, because it really felt that community was strong and didn't need the extra attention that the signature initiative mechanism provides. In 2012, the Nanotechnology Knowledge Infrastructure, the NKI, and the Nanotechnology for Sensors and Sensors for Nanotechnology signature initiatives were formed. And more recently, just on World Water Day this spring, we launched our most recent signature initiative, Water Sustainability through Nanotechnology, Nanoscale Solutions for a Global Scale Challenge. And these signature initiatives, each one depends really on what's necessary to advance that area. For instance, the NKI, the informatics activity, is really embedded very deeply in the community. If we talk about information sharing and databases, this is really dependent on community engagement and involvement, where there are other ones which tend to be more of a government-to-government discussion, and it really depends on what makes sense, again, for driving those areas forward. And one of the things that these signature initiatives have done are webinars, requests for information to engage the public, workshops. We've also moved more toward embedding activities in existing conferences and workshops, technical symposia, so that we're really reaching the active researchers where they are. We've also introduced a new mechanism for collaboration, and this is really collaboration not only within the federal government, but really deeply tied to the community, and this is the Grand Challenge, which perhaps you've heard a little bit about. We've launched the nanotechnology-inspired Grand Challenge around advanced computing. The challenge is to create a new type of computer that can proactively interpret and learn from data, solve unfamiliar problems using what it has learned, and operate with the energy efficiency of the human brain. Now, that is not a challenge that will be met tomorrow. This is each piece of those things is difficult, but the community has really been receptive to this concept and are rallying around this challenge. There's industry involved, academics involved, and really starting to tackle some of the issues that are needed to have this type of computing. And this goes beyond what we typically use, our typical von Neumann-based computing, looking at entirely new architectures. So this is an exciting area for us, and we're really just beginning to ramp up those efforts. I wanted to point out, if anyone on this webinar today is in industry or has interest in those areas, that we have a number of resources that are really directed specifically for industrial stakeholders. We've developed a frequently asked questions for business page on nano.gov, and we have a dedicated liaison here at the NNCO, and his name is Mike Kiley. His contact information is there. He can help with general or specific questions, help build connections with some of the government program managers or other people that might be useful, and also put in touch with the people in the regulatory agencies that might help them understand what they need to do to develop technologies in nanotechnology. Okay. All right. So what I've talked about so far has really addressed Goal 1 and Goal 2. I want to move more into Goal 3, and if you remember, this is looking at the research infrastructure, and I think of that very broadly. So there's the physical infrastructure, which I'm going to talk about now, which includes microscopes and tools and fabrication facilities. But there's also the cyber infrastructure, which is the computing models and simulations and databases, and then the human infrastructure, which is where I'll spend most of the time of my talk today. So there are a number of resources over the past 15 years that have been developed to support the physical infrastructure. And the example I'm showing here is the National Science Foundation National Nanotechnology Coordinated Infrastructure, the NNCI. And this is a group of 16 sites where academic centers are user facilities. They're available for use. The instrumentation that is available varies from site to site, and you can find that information online. And recently awarded has been the coordination site, which is at Georgia Tech. And I believe I saw earlier that Nancy Healy was on today, and she is the person at Georgia Tech who is coordinating the educational and outreach activities of this network. So if you don't know her yet, I would encourage you to get to know her. The Department of Energy also has a network of user facilities, and these are at the national laboratories that are illustrated here. And I thank my colleague George Marcus for this slide. I've changed it a bit to make the images bigger, but the nanoscale science research centers, there's the Center for Functional Nanomaterials, the Center for Integrated Nanotechnologies, the Center for Nanophase Materials Sciences, the Center for Nanoscale Materials, and the Molecular Foundry. And these facilities are available for academics and industry. They're available internationally to researchers at no cost for research that is non-proprietary. So for researchers who want to do business sensitive or proprietary work, there is some cost recovery for those activities. That's but if you are going to publish it in the open literature, there's a proposal process, and you can get access to these facilities at no charge. There's more information on the Department of Energy website, and we'll is there a follow-up with, I'm just recalling that there was a question about resources. Is there a follow-up with a request, with a list of resources? And I believe that's the case. And
yes, we typically do that, Lisa. We will send out a list of annotated resources along with the presentation itself as well as the recording. So thank you for reminding me about that.
Great. So so we will be sure to include a link to this site as well. I did not include an image today, but there's also a nano center at NIST, which is a user facility, both the nano lab and the nano fab, and we'll include that in the list of resources as well. So I mentioned that we've been engaging in webinars like this, but also very specific to different topic areas at of the NNI. I mentioned that the signature initiatives are doing that. It's a way to engage the community. It's a way to share information, and then the fact that they can be archived really means that I think that it can have a longer lasting impact on community engagement. So we've started a number of different series of these webinars. We have a small and medium-sized enterprise series, and really trying to address the issues of interest to small businesses. And this is a screenshot from the first one that we did. And we are trying to do these economically, so we don't have a big production crew, but it really gives us an opportunity to share more information by doing them in this way. And we use Adobe Connect as well. we've started a series with the Environmental Health Implications Group. And again, this is a kind of a really important point that I like to make is lab safety, as I've already mentioned. We did do our first one from the Environmental Health and Safety Group, looking at applying a lab safety culture to nanotechnology. And we've also developed a number of resources that are available, including the ones that I showed, but many more, about safe handling of nanomaterials in the laboratory. And I would encourage you to review this webinar if you have an interest in this area, or if you have students that may be working or starting to work in a laboratory. Okay, so now I'm going to move into the area I think that's the primary focus for today, and certainly one of the areas of my passion, and that is really looking at education and outreach. And our office is responsible for the public-facing aspect of the NNI, and over the past couple of years, we've really added a lot of education and outreach activities focused on students and teaching. And we really, I was excited that this year our budget supplement, I showed you the cover a little bit earlier, but the back cover really highlighted these activities, these education activities. And in the image on the left is of student networks, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. The two images that are kind of in the middle, the second and fourth, are pictures that were submitted, or images that were submitted to our image contest. The one on the right is a submission to our video contest, and then the one in the middle is our superhero contest, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. Well, let me move on. I want to poll the group and understand if you're a teacher or an instructor, at what level do you teach? And we'll give you a few minutes to put in that information.
Lisa, I'll suggest for those of us who are not directly involved in teaching, maybe in the chat window you can say that you're a researcher or you're involved on the governmental side. So folks, just take a minute, as some of you are doing already. Lisa, you can see them entering into the chat window if they don't match the poll. But you can see the poll developing with a close neck and neck between community college and undergraduate folks, with some high school people as well. Let's give them 5 more seconds, and then we'll wrap up that poll. Oh, good. Folks typing in the chat window. Lisa, that's a very interesting audience you've got today. Let's go ahead and close the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll end it with the majority of us at community colleges or undergraduate higher education institutions, with some high schoolers as well. And thank you folks for putting in the chat window. Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and let you go back right into your presentation.
Great. Well, that was very helpful. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our K12 activities, because I hope that even if you're focusing your teaching at the undergraduate level, that there's opportunities for outreach to the local schools as well. So one of the things that we've done is to really partner with other people. Again, we're a small office, so we're really looking to leverage everyone else's activities to promote awareness of the activities that are out there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, and also just to collaborate so we can have a broader impact. And one of the things that I'm excited about over the past year or so, I guess, is we worked with the Fairfax County Schools. I'm hoping that I'm correct. To develop, a nanotechnology video, which is part of their innovation workshop. Now they have a film division, and I'm calling it the wrong thing. I don't know what it's called, but I'm so excited about what they're doing, where they develop video content for the classroom. So it's actual technical content that's used in the classrooms. I think it's focused primarily at middle schools, and they did an issue. It was a single video, but then it was sectioned into much smaller videos that could be used more easily in the classroom, focused on nanotechnology. And the exciting aspect of these videos is not only the reach that they have through the school districts, but also that they are, you could see in the video, in the image on the left, it's a student who goes out and interviews people. So there's a really fun perspective, as opposed to someone like me going out and talking to people is not as compelling to the students. So I'm excited about these videos that they prepared in this particular episode, and I understand that they are planning to revisit nanotechnology in their series in the future, and we certainly hope that we can collaborate with them on that. NSF also worked with NBC Learn. And we saw, I don't know if you've seen the Science of Ice Hockey or the Science of the Olympics series that NSF and NBC Learn had put together. They're really amazing video series, educational. You can find them on the NSF or the NBC Learn site. But we inquired whether there'd be interest in doing something in nanotechnology, and we're just thrilled that they liked the idea and just absolutely ran with it. And you can see images from the 6 episodes that they produced over this past year, and I think that they're a great introduction to nanotechnology in these different areas. And again, these are available. That nano.gov points to these, and will include both the NBC Learn and the NSF site as part of our resources today. On nano.gov, we've developed an education page that highlights resources at different levels, and you can see there's different buttons here for K12 students, for teachers. I'm going to come back to the networks in a little bit. We have lists of college, grad school, and postdoc opportunities and programs. It's really nearly impossible to keep track of what's going on. So if you have a program at your school that we haven't captured, please let us know. We'd love to add it. This is growing all of the time, and we certainly do try to keep up with that. We have information about associate's degrees, certificates, and job information. We have resources for laboratory safety. It's both here and on other pages where we touch on environmental health and safety issues. And then we have multimedia resources and our contests on the bottom right. So the tab on the top of nano.gov is education, and you can get to all of these resources from that page. So over the past several years, Jim Murday has led some discussions about nanoscale science and engineering education. It is a real passion of his as well. And he's held a benchmarking, international benchmarking workshop a few years ago, and then more recently, kind of a follow-up to that, where he brought in the community of educators across the age spectrum to really look at where are the best practices, what resources are there, and what are the needs. And one of the primary things that came out of these discussions was that it was really difficult for teachers of all levels to find resources. So we worked to develop we collected as many resources as we could find. This is, again, growing all of the time. So if you have resources that are not included, we'd love to help you get them put into this database. We worked with NanoHub, where this database is housed, and it's searchable. And you can see from the columns that are in this image here that you can search by source. You can search by core discipline, the subject area, whether it's chemistry, physics, or biology, grade level, whether or not it's video or a lab. And then it also maps it to the big ideas of nanoscience. So this database has lessons, videos, labs, teaching aids. For K12, it has undergraduate resources, community college resources, the resources that have been developed by Nancy and the NNCI, by NACK, by NanoLink, by many, many others. NISNet are really easily found at this site. And I encourage you, if you're starting a new class or want to incorporate nanotechnology into your current classes, this is a great place to look for resources and then tailor them for your own use. I want to talk a little bit about our teaching network, and then also I'll spend a little bit more time talking, since so many of you are working with undergraduates, our undergraduate efforts. One of the things that we also found through our engagement with educators is that they really wanted to talk to each other. And we went to the National Science Teachers Association meeting in Nashville this past year and engaged with thousands of teachers about what they're doing and what they are looking for, and just, interacting with them. And one of the things that they really wanted was a way to talk to each other. So we've developed a teaching nano and emerging technologies network. We have a resource, the resource portal that I pointed out. We have telephone conversations, and we also have developed a shared workspace where they can post questions for each other, and we have a webinar series that we've launched for this area as well. And we have done one webinar where a teacher in New Jersey presented her experience teaching a year-long high school course in nanotechnology, and that is archived, and we'll send the link to that webinar as well. I'd like to move into some undergraduate activities. I've taught at the high school and undergraduate level, and as we mentioned at the beginning, I'm an engineer, and I've taught primarily engineering students, and I found that many of my students, even my best students, didn't necessarily stay in engineering when they graduated, and this was a real source of frustration to see us losing that technical workforce, because the students, even though they were good at it, weren't necessarily passionate about it. So, one of the ways to get students excited is to really raise their awareness of things they don't see in their normal classwork. Raise their awareness of cutting-edge research and opportunities to come. So instead of doing problem sets, having an opportunity to talk to researchers or talk to industry that's developing the next generation technologies. So this network is about connecting existing student groups or encouraging the formation of new student groups that are focused on nano and emerging technologies. And these are intentionally interdisciplinary, so they're not a physics society or a biology society. Most of the students that are engaged are also engaged in their discipline-specific activity, but this is really to bring them all together and to promote opportunities for them to get into a lab and do research, or to do internships, or to network with industry and expert researchers. So this network we've just been kind of pulling it together over the past year, and it is expanding rapidly. We bring the students together once a year. We did it for our very first time this past May at the Student Leaders Conference, which is co-located with the Tech Connect meeting, which is also co-located with the Small Business Innovative Research National Annual Meeting. So they have interactions with academic researchers, industry leaders, small business entrepreneurs, investors, and government representatives. So it's a great opportunity for them to really explore advance technology in a lot of different ways. And I could talk about this all day. I'll move on because I know that we want to leave time for questions. But if there's any interest at your institution, or you'd like more information about this activity, the email at the bottom there, nanoed@nnco.nano.gov, will put you in touch with us, and we'd be more than glad to share more information. The intent is for these to be student-led activities, so each group is really a little bit different depending on the student interests or the culture at the specific university or college. If there's a med school there might be more biomed activities. And then again, even a single group, the activities and the interests vary year to year based on what the students want to do. All right, so one of the other things that that we launched last year, and this was in collaboration with NSF, was the establishment of Generation Nano, and this was just a really exciting activity, and this was to challenge high school students to use nanotechnology to empower their superheroes and to develop a unique, so it's not using existing superheroes, but creating their own superhero that has either a costume or gear that's enabled by nanotechnology. And we were really excited that Stan Lee found out about this contest and was really excited about it, promoted it through his social media campaigns. This is an image of him where he was encouraging students to participate and saying, I've created all these superheroes, now it's your turn. And these are panels from the winning comics last year. And on the NSF website, and we'll share a link, there's more information, and there's short videos that were made from each one of these winning comics, and they're just absolutely fabulous. And I'm pleased to announce, maybe just a little bit prematurely, that it will be launched again this year. And in early October, NSF will announce the new competition for Generation Nano. And you can see that there's 4 different superheroes that are illustrated here, and they're asking students to take on a mission. And you can see the ones that are imaged shown here, a mission of health, of the environment, I can't remember what the gray one is. Quinn, if you could put it in the chat box, and justice on the far right. So there'll be more information about this coming out, but we could really use your help spreading the word. We were pleased with the submissions last year. We had submissions from all over the country, but we'd really love to get students excited about how nanotechnology can enable superheroes. Okay, I see Quinn. Okay, so Quinn, thank you for backing me up there. The 4 missions are using technology for relief, environment, health, and justice. Okay, so I have one more poll. This is my last poll. Can we move into this? I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite application of nanotechnology to highlight with your students?
Now, Lisa, it's going to take us a little bit more to read this, so
Lisa, I think we might have lost Mike here. Can you hear me, Lisa?
I just muted my microphone so I could take a drink of water.
I don't know. I think Mike might have hit the wrong button or something, because all of a sudden we lost him there. He was in mid-sentence. Okay. So
well, we'll give.
he's coming back here. Go ahead. I think we have. Oh, it's interesting. It's a spread of. Let's see. The big one is energy, and then followed by electronics, where kind of all this stuff started. Environment and medicine. It looks like, Lisa. It's kind of the
Great.
ranking. Yeah.
Well,
I'm
well,
back, folks. Excuse me. I lost my audio there just for a second. I'm back.
Okay.
well, this is great. So there's interest in all of these areas. I've got I know we want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So I have a number of slides I'm going to go through, but probably quite quickly. I noticed that not a lot of people mention food and agriculture. Actually, nanotechnology is becoming more and more important in that area. And one of the things that I'm excited about in that particular area is just when the way you think about precision medicine and how nanotechnology can really we're moving toward treating cancer on an individual cellular basis. Those types of very small. The same goes for agriculture and looking at, instead of using fertilizer broadly, which can have an impact locally. We worry significantly about the Chesapeake Bay. Can we deliver the nutrients that are required in a better way, in a precise way that would have less of an environmental impact? But I'll talk about some other applications as well. So the point I like to make with students is, nanotechnology sounds, really exciting and futuristic, and it is, but it's also here already. There's thousands of products that are on the market that are enabled by nanotechnology or improved by nanotechnology, and they're really just a part of our everyday life now. So the future's really here, and these are some images of commercial products that use nanotechnology in some way. And I'm just going to highlight some topical areas very quickly. And again, I think since many of you said that you use these examples, quantum dot televisions are now they're here. I mean, you can purchase them, quantum dot displays. So this is one of the real mass market applications. Quantum dots are different than the way vacuum tube displays were done in the past. In consumer electronics, I mean, any of us who are older certainly recognize that we're carrying a supercomputer in our pocket every day, and it's just amazing the changes that have occurred over the past several years. Also, medicine. The nanotechnology application for tissue regeneration, for even bone and soft tissues, restorative dental, of course, for using diagnostics, and then some cancer drugs as well. The one on the top is a sensor application that is used to, if you have food that it has to be transported long distances, there are sensors that can tell whether or not that package has gone out of the safety temperature zone and for how long. And that's could be very important for things like shellfish. Nanotechnology, the director currently is Mike Metter from NASA, so I have to throw in space applications. Nanotechnology has made it into space. It's been on every one of the Mars rover, the aerogels. And there's also been CNT nanocomposites for EM shielding and sensors. But many of these examples that I've already shown you are improving existing products, making things we already know better. Sporting goods are one of those early adopters because you can absorb the price point of new materials. You can have a better bat or a better golf club. But what's really exciting about nanotechnology are the things that it's going to enable that weren't possible before. And I think that's part of the grand challenge that I talked about for future computing, looking at new ways to do computation that didn't exist before and couldn't be possible without nanotechnology. So in areas like food and agriculture, I mentioned some of the precision farming, but also embedded sensors, barrier films so that you don't have moisture or oxygen getting to your food. Energy, I love to use the example of energy. This is one of my favorite examples. If you think about photovoltaics, I love the concept of energy harvesting in a variety of ways. And then this picture on the left is of my family at a wind farm in upstate New York. I often challenge my students to find an application that doesn't require nanotechnology. And I know several years ago, maybe students are becoming more aware of applications, but nobody thought a wind turbine could possibly be nano because it's so enormous. But of course, the superhydrophobic coatings that prevent icing on those turbine blades, and also some of the lubricants, and even moving towards some of the composite structures use nanotechnology. Nanotechnology in water for water purification, point of use purification strategies, sensors for detecting chemicals in the water. And then I love this video that Rice put out many years ago now of a sponge for soaking up oil that can be used again and again. And I encourage you to go to that link. It's a great video. In medicine, many of you mentioned that you use these examples. Headlines like CNN's, "Will nanotechnology allow you to swallow the doctor?" I think that just sums it up. I mean, the applications of nanotechnology in medicine, from detecting, imaging, taking biopsies from the image on the right, these little nanostars that came out of Johns Hopkins, or even tattooed sensors, so you can measure chemicals in your sweat or your heart rate or oxygen levels, so that you can have better diagnostic tools. And of course, nanotechnology really is the science behind superheroes and magic. So you can climb the wall like a gecko, or you can hide behind an invisibility cloak. And these are opportunities, I think, to really get students excited about nanotechnology. So finally, I think I'm wrapping up. I wanted to make sure everybody's aware about National Nanotechnology Day. And National Nanotechnology Day, of course, is October 9th for 10 to the minus 9. And it's an opportunity to really, in my mind, celebrate what's been done in nanotechnology. It's really difficult to tell the story. As we've talked about, the applications of nanotechnology are so broad, it's hard to illustrate the impact that nanotechnology has had. So this is a community-driven activity where we're trying to collect activities that people are doing. We've been talking with technical societies that are developing white papers and op-ed pieces, editorials that talk about nanotechnology and the future of the NNI. And we're also encouraging folks, our version of citizen science is to encourage students, how fast can you run 1 billion nanometers? And we hope that sparks the thought of, how far is 1 billion nanometers? And can a student really run 100 meters? Of course they can. And we are encouraging people to use the hashtag and to take images or videos of the 100 billion nanometer dash. But really, there's activities that are planned all over the country to do outreach. There are art museum activities that are planned. We would love to hear what you're doing and put it on the website and help promote the activities that are happening all around the country for National Nanotechnology Day. And I'm glad to talk with anyone more if they're interested. So finally, I'd just like to say, many people think the NNI is at a tipping point. We've gone from really the fundamental understanding. We've developed a foundation of understanding that's really moving into the marketplace, moving into more complex systems. And the future of those activities really depends on the community. It depends on the workforce. It depends on student engagement. And we really hope to engage with you, and you can participate through webinars and workshops. respond to our requests for information when we put them out, and never hesitate to contact the NNCO, because we would love to hear from you and engage with you. And with that, I'd like to just wrap up.
Thank you, Lisa. There was just so much information here today that I myself wasn't aware of, and I think that many of us weren't quite aware of all the resources that were available. Bob, let me turn to you. Would you like to forward some questions to Lisa? And I have a couple also.
Sure. There was a question from let's see, regarding the some of the materials that are out there about the Nano Emerging Technologies Student Network. Are they are they all across the country, and do these students interact with one another? How does that
Yes,
work?
they do. I don't want to, Bob, I'll answer your question, but I also want to point out the question there from Tom in the chat group that is, I think, right in Rain's alley. So I want to make sure we get time to answer that one as well. But the student network, we have a handful of clubs right now. So at the first Student Leaders Conference, we had 22 students from 11 different institutions across the country. And some of them had active groups and some of them didn't. But we know of 4 new groups that have formed this fall. And we have a new group in California that's become engaged. So we really are hoping that we can seed these clubs all over the country. We could really use your help, especially any of you that are working at undergraduate institutions, in helping spark the interest in this in a student, because it really just takes 1 or 2 interested students to pull it together, to have some passion, and it impacts hundreds of students every year. When they bring in, we brought in SpaceX to speak one time. We must have had 300 people in the room, and they still talk about that presentation. Or they go and tour a facility. We went to NASA one year and took a group of students. So the students have a monthly telecon, or sometimes we do it by Google Chat or Google Hangouts, I guess it's called. So they talk to each other that way. They have a collaborative space online that they've set up where they use the platform Slack. They also have a LinkedIn group. We have a group chat that we use, and sometimes they talk mostly at night, so I'm glad I keep my phone off while I sleep, because they're very busy buzzing all night long. So yes, the whole point is to get them connected to each other and learn from each other, and how did you get funding for this, or how did you put on this program, or how do you get food so you get students there, and they know all those things and the tricks. And then I just I try to help provide guidance and point them to experts, and I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. There's another corollary to that. That sounded like there was a lot of internal communication from the group. Is there an outward-facing social media aspect from the students, basically out?
So yeah, that's one of the things that we're working on. I mean, the success of the network depends on the success of each group, so I want to make sure that they don't spread too thin and not do the activities that support their group. But what my hope is that each group works with the local high schools, and then eventually my grand plan would be that there would be junior clubs that were set up in the high schools that then reached out to the middle schools, which is kind of the scalable STEM interest. And even if it's lab tours or a journal club or helping to mentor a science fair project, I think that it can have a much bigger impact that way. But we're at the very early stages right now. We're really focusing on establishing the undergraduate, which hopefully will become nodes in their areas. And they've been talking about doing a newsletter. We haven't done that yet. I think there's students who are interested in it. It's just bandwidth. I mean, I'm very serious that they have to do their schoolwork first.
Yeah, that is important.
Right.
Great. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that Quinn and I had an exchange, and people didn't catch it or not. Some of those NBC Learn videos, and
Yeah.
the answer is already there, that they're not hours long or an hour long. They're 5 to 6 minutes, so they're good plug and play into curriculum. So just something to think about for those in attendance, and to spread the word out there to folks. So some of the videos are quite long, hour long, and so on. These are kind of plug and play videos, as I understand. I know I've seen one or two of them so far, but I haven't seen them all.
Yeah, they're great. Good point.
Bob, I've
Fantastic.
got a question. If I can jump in too, it's sort of related. Lisa, is there, often if I'm at a high school or college, I wonder if I could bring in a speaker to address my class. Is that done informally? Is there a speaker bureau that's somehow
Oh gosh.
coordinated by NNCO, local, that I could reach out, or is it done by one by one?
I am not aware of that, but I think that's a great idea.
Oh,
Um, so no, I think at this stage it's usually done, by reaching out. But I think that that's a great idea. And I'd like to follow up on that.
okay. One last question from my side, Bob, if you don't mind. Lisa, I know you have an interest in connecting from universities and research into industry, and you mentioned the Small Business Innovative Research Program. There was an initiative where community colleges could team with industries through supplemental funding for SBIR grants. Are you aware of that? Does that still exist?
I don't know, but that's something that we can look into. I'm not aware of that program, but I would be very. I know that there's a goalie program. I assume that you mean NSF.
NSF,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
but we can certainly look into that, and if there is a program, we'll include it in the resource links.
Okay, good, good. I might follow up with you on that because our program officer had sent us some information about that. So,
Oh, that's fantastic. I also wanted to point out on the videos the Fairfax County Public Schools, and I might have butchered that name when I mentioned it earlier. Those that innovation workshop video has also been put into smaller sections. I'm looking at the list of them now. They're on the order of 5 minutes. The longest one I see is about 8 minutes. They toured the NIST facility. I mean, they're really great also. And again, not an hour long, so there's something that you can topically put in easily into your class.
excellent. Bob, we're just about at our close. Do you have one more question for Lisa? If not, we'll go into our final announcements.
I think we've got most of them covered right now, because we don't have much time. We're already right up against the time here. Oh, look at that. Lisa, this is actually something a little surprise for you. It's going to be raining across the nation on National Nanotechnology Day.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're actually doing a concurrent rain sessions. And for those of you who are not aware of that, we're going to pick a couple hours, and it's not going to be on 10/9 because 10/9 happens to be on Sunday. So reaching into the classrooms on 10/9 probably won't work just this year. But this year we're going to pick another day, probably sometime that week, where we will be reaching into classrooms concurrently, and we have the ability to reach into classrooms, multiple classrooms at the same time, and give control of our instruments, our remotely accessible instruments for nanotechnology. We presently have 10 members of that, and we're going to try to, we really will be going from Seattle and Arizona and New York and Pennsylvania, and at several of our other sites, we'll be reaching into the classrooms on that day and doing concurrent sessions. So we'll have a phone-in number, and then we're going to set you up. So it's kind of like going to be a neat National Nanotechnology Network Day. But we also have this service available. Tom asked about it earlier, to reach into classrooms, and it is a free service where you can get your students or you to operate the instruments like scanning electron microscopes, scanning probe microscopes, and many other instruments, and bring them into your classrooms, which I think is pretty cool. And you can see the website for that right there. Mike?
So that I know that's a growing network, and that picture down below shows, for example, that's a high school classroom that's live logging into probably a scanning electron microscope. I'm not sure if that's what it is. Sort of looks like it, but it actually works. And I know a number of us online that are on this webinar have actually utilized the RAIN network. So thanks for that little promo there. Just would like to, as we wrap up today, Lisa, thank you very much for all the information that you presented. It was very kind of you and also very informative. The webinar is being recorded, and the slides will be available through either of our sponsors' websites, Nano for Me or NCI Southwest. You'll see that You don't have to write down these links. They're going to come to you on Monday in your email. You're going to see these links directly to it. So we appreciate your following up and maybe passing this on to other folks. I'm your host, Mike Lasecki. I want to thank you again for attending this NACK Network and NCI Southwest webinar. I'm going to launch right now and just take one more moment to help us demonstrate our impact to our funder. In the screen right now, I'm going to launch a survey. Depending on your gear, sometimes a Mac won't always launch this survey. But for many of you, appearing on your screen right now is a very brief survey. So please click those radial buttons. And if the survey didn't launch for you, you can launch it from that window by clicking on the URL and then clicking in the Browse to. Bob and Lisa, thank you again for joining us. I'm sure that there's going to be lots more of connections between our organizations and the NNCO, so we appreciate your participation today.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Okay, and Bob, thank you for being moderator.
Lisa, thank you so much for this. Is great information, and the NNCO site and Nano.gov site has grown tremendously over the years, and it's a great resource for educators. So I hope people will and elders, but hopefully the educators will utilize that great asset.
Well, thanks, Bob and Lisa. Again, friends, this officially concludes our webinar. I'm going to go ahead and leave the survey up for just another minute, and then I'll be shutting down this system. So thank you again for joining us today. Goodbye, everyone.